Hi everyone, this is Sharon. Today I would like to share with you a flip through of this custom journal that I just completed. The request for this journal was to make something that is kind of shabby and has flowers, birds, and butterflies in it. On the front, I cinched it up with some sari silk ribbon in this pretty blue tone, and then I just embellished that a little bit with this piece of vintage jewelry. So I will take those off, and I wrapped this around quite a few times. And then the cover I made from this linen covered book, and it's in this really pretty, I love this color. It's kind of a brownish, maybe a little green tint to it. And the spine I covered with this antique French fabric. And then I just added a little bit of lace on there. And then in the corners on the front cover, I added these metal embellishments. This journal is the spine is about 3 inches thick, and there are 7 signatures. Going inside, I used quite a few different digital kits from lots of different digital makers. So I will try to list as many as I can down in the description. The ones that I will talk about as I go through, just to kind of briefly point out, all of my signature covers, I've used this really pretty kit from Chapter 1 Papers. It's their French floral kit. And then the inside covers are images from the Graphics Fairy. On the inside of the spine, I use this coordinating French fabric also, and I really love how that works with this floral kit that I've used throughout. So on this first page, I used a vintage envelope that was part of kind of a gift wrapping set. And I'm thinking it was from maybe the 50s, 60s, something in that era. On this side, I created a side tuck on the envelope, and in there I made this large journaling card with this girl on the front, and then some ledger paper on the back. And then in the envelope, I tucked this botanical image, and it's on the newsprint paper, so it's nice and light. And I love how that kind of bled through to the back side, but it's still light enough that you can write on there. On this page, I took a piece of velvet and embossed that with a little design and stitched that on the page. Here I created a tuck on the top of the page, and in there I just clipped together these items with this little piece of vintage book page. And then I made a couple of journaling spots and just did some stamping on the back. This is some antique ledger paper from the 1800s. And then I've incorporated some bird images. Here I created a side tuck, and then in there I put this old French postcard, and that is dated 1915. I've also incorporated some old book pages as well. And on this page, I made this journaling spot that flips over the top of the page, and just did some stitching and layering on there. That's the front and that's the back. And then on the inside, there's lots of journaling space. Here I added some antique fabrics and trims. This is a page from a botanical book that I have. On the inside, I created some pockets from a linen digital a doily and then made some pockets there. And the back side I decoupaged with a napkin. And then in the pockets I created these journaling cards. Here I added a fabric tab, stitched that on. On this page, I clipped a vintage envelope and just embossed the side of the envelope and added some collaging to the flap. And inside I've got a journaling card, and this is from an old encyclopedia page, and this is all about fans. This page I love. This is like a swatch or sample page, and where the fabric samples swatches were supposed to go, I used some of my own antique and vintage fabrics and just adhered those onto the page. Here I created a corner pocket, and in that pocket I have some vintage French ephemera. It still has the old rusty pin in it. And then this blank check. Here I just did a little collaging on the side of the page. And this is the flap of the envelope, and I stenciled that with some ink, and then I adhered this large doily piece to it to act as another page. Here on the top of this page, I embellished it with some sari fabric, some wool fabric, and a wax seal. Here I created a corner pocket from an embroidery piece, and in there I tucked this French book page, and this is a fly sheet, marbled fly sheet from an old book. Just love the colors in there. This page is made from wallpaper, and I just added a little bit of a header up there and punched the side of the page. And then on this book page, I did a paper punch on sort of a tone-on-tone off-white color. Here I used, this is actually some faux washi from the Graphics Fairy. I just thought that worked nicely with the bird on that book page. On this page, I created a fabric flap with this dotted Swiss tulle, and then just added a couple yo-yos to the top. And then over on this page, let you see these beautiful pages. I clipped this little folio. It's got these pretty birds on the outside. So I've got side pockets on each side, and in there I just tuck a couple of vintage photos that I embellished a little bit. People love their outfits, the coats and the hats. And this lady is admiring her roses. On this side, I created a pocket, and in there I tucked a little journaling card that I made. And this is another journaling spot. And this is a vintage book page on the back. This is a page from a calendar book that I have. It's got some really beautiful images in there. And this is the other side. You can see this is a nice spot for writing. And here I just glued down some pressed flower and a pressed sleeve onto an old envelope piece that I stenciled. And then on that page, I've got this little journaling card and this journaling page that can be used for writing. I just did a little light stenciling on the back. On this page, I've got a flip out place to write behind, and then in there I tucked this page from a vintage flower catalog. And then this is a page from a very old dictionary, and it's got some really neat illustrations in it. So this is a whole page of birds. And then on this page, I created this pocket. And in there, I've got this journaling card that I made. Here I did a little cluster with some fabric and paper. On this page, I created a flip out with a vintage envelope. So you can see this round window, which I love. And then that I attached to, this is the other side of that wallpaper that I use for the page. So you can see the wallpaper through the envelope, and you could stick something inside there if you'd like. And then that flips open. I just did a little collaging under there. And these documents were the actual documents that were in this envelope from 1937. Here I've got a piece of trim that I got from Rachel at Roxy Creations. I believe it's quite old. Here I created a corner tuck from this piece of paper doily. And then I created this tag. I just love this image of this book cover. Added some ribbon on the bottom. And then this flips out in the back, and then we've got these images of sugar and creamers and coffee cups, teacups. On this page, I have this item that flips up over the top again, and there's some writing space inside. Lined it with this butterfly paper. And this is what the back side looks like. There's a pocket and this vintage tea card. And that's on this page from an embroidery book, and I just punched the edge of that page. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I made this pocket, and then I have this altered playing card in there. And I've been practicing my watercolor swatches inspired by Rachel and Leslie, and they're getting a little better. They're not quite as blobby as they used to be. And then on this page, I've got this tag that I clipped on. It's got some vintage fabric for the tab on the top. And then on the back side, I used this photo as a side tuck and stitched that on. And then on this side of the page, I clipped on a few items. This card that I made, a French book page, and then this beautiful blue fly sheet from a book. Another one of those calendar pages. And here I just had to incorporate these Italian ladies from Rachel's, one of her latest kits. And so I just created this flip that actually flips down. And it's got some old ledger paper on the back and some other paper. And then in the center on the strings, I just hung a few beads. Here I created a corner pocket, and then in there I've got this antique invoice. This is one of the invoices from one of my digital kits. I've got a kit with a whole bunch of old invoices from the early 1900s, and this is one of the originals from 1912. And then this is a journaling sheet that I created, a copy of an old French document, but I just love the splattered ink on there. And there's a place to journal on the back of that. Here I created a cluster up in the corner with something that I've had the longest time in my studio and finally parted with it. This old adding machine tape from the 1940s. I just love how the numbers look on there, but I've clipped that in with some old fabric and a punch piece of paper and a little embroidered flower. Here I created a belly band that wraps around the page to this side and then just embellished with some paper buttons. And then on this side I tucked this piece of antique paper from 1839. It's got some beautiful handwriting on it. And then on this page I just embellished with some lace. On this side, I clipped one of these foldy pocket things, and I can't remember who I saw make them anymore. But I thought I'd create one and just put in, here's a faux calling card, and I just put this lace image on the back. And then in this pocket, I've got a little journaling card. And then on the back, I've got an original antique German piece. On this page, I created a paper belly band. It's a paper ruffle. I just embellished it in the middle with some linen fabric and a real button. And I stenciled the back side of the page. And in there, I tucked this tag. And then on the back, I've got a little shell pocket and just stuck some vintage tickets in there. And then I have this French catalog page selling, looks like drapery items. Here I just love this kind of orangey coral lace page. And I put a pocket on there made from an antique piece of French fabric. And in that pocket I have this French envelope, and it's got this really pretty kind of a pale purple lining. But in there is a calling card. And that's all original. And then this is something I made. My own faux calling card. Here I made a side tuck with this decorative paper, and in there I added this tag. On this page I created a top tuck with this butterfly image and just added a little bit of lace on there. And in that pocket I tucked this antique postcard, and that is dated 1909. That's a local one from not too far from where I live. And then I added this French notebook page. I'm not sure how old this is, but it's an original. Then this page I made from an antique music sheet. It is quite old, and this is all the original tape that was on there. I just love the pattern on the edge of the page. And then this is still some of that music paper yet. And on there I put these pockets with these, I've got quite a few of these embroidery images throughout, and those are from Tailor Made Journals, I know that. And I just love the colors she's got in that kit. They're just tons of images. So in those pockets, I created some tags with these beautiful ladies. this one. I love these old Victorian images. And then I've got these rather old worn charms on the strings. And then here I have another top tuck with these beautiful butterflies. And in there I have this large tag that I inserted with some sari trim for the ribbon on top. And these pretty ladies on the back. Side tuck on this page, and again a large journaling card. Here I've got a pressed hydrangea, and that's stitched on with this piece of paper for a side tuck. And that's the back. I stenciled on there. And this is a piece of vintage wallpaper. Old dictionary page. And then on this ledger paper, I stenciled with some paste. On this page, I clipped this faux file with these insects on the outside. And then, let's see, I think it goes that way. Yeah, on the inside, I've got this antique book page. It kind of lines the back, and then there's some writing space. And then I just lined the middle of the spine with a piece of fabric. On this page, I made a flip out, so I actually stitched it along this side, and then it wraps around to this side, and then that flips out, and out again. So there's this beautiful image of the chandelier on there, and then I've got this little fabric flip up in the corner that I hand stitched with a piece of lace across there. That makes a nice little private journaling spot. And then the image on this side is pretty too. That's just like a French ball. On this page, I clipped this little journaling spot. Some place to write on the inside. On this page, I made a journaling card with this beautiful pheasant. Oops. Back side, and this is some antique wallpaper. Here I took these book pages, and it was actually, they were separate pages, but what I decided to do was stitch them down to the pages behind, add some washi in the middle for reinforcement, and then those made some really nice, big, generous pockets. And I just punched the edges of those, and inside I made some journaling cards. So I've got this lady, and then here's a large card in the back with some room to journal. And then also on this side, got this lady, the back. On this page, I decided to put this piece of trim I absolutely love. I just got it recently. It's from the early 1900s. I believe it is a French trim, but I just thought the colors went so well on that page. Here I created this top tuck and just punched out the bottom, so it kind of gave it a little embellishment along the bottom side of it. And in there I tuck this page from a 1952 McCall's Needlebook magazine. It's got some really nice advertising on there. On this page I created this flip out, so I took my page had this extension, and I just stitched onto it this extra piece. And then for my tab, I used these butterfly images and just mirrored them and glued them together. Trying to cut those out and make them fit on both sides exactly is a little bit of a trick. And then I created a corner tuck on the top of this page with an embossed piece of cardstock, and I just added some gold gilding on there. And then in that pocket, I tuck this original German postcard, and that is from 1913. Here I've got another corner tuck with a paper doily, and I just embellished it with this image of this lady. And then in there I tucked this journaling page, just a little stenciling on the back of that. For this page, I decided to use a jacket from one of my bird books. I just love the images and the color on there. It's so pretty. And eventually I am going to be out of pages in that book, so I thought, well, I might as well use the jacket. And then, so this side, I just created a little side tuck with the flap and lined it with a vintage handwritten letter. And then embellished that a little bit. And there I put this tag. Some more of my watercolor swatches. And then on this side of that sampler page, I decided just to take my Sam Pool stamps and stamp along each of those spots where the fabric would be. Some antique French book page. Here I created a pocket down at the bottom and added some lace trim to that. And in there I've just got a couple of little cards. Here I created a side tuck with this embroidery image. And that leaves ample space for some big pieces of ephemera. So here I've got one of my original French checks, and this one's dated 1911. Some really pretty graphics on there. And then I also inserted this music book page. Here I created a little flip again with one of those Italian fashion ladies. And you can do some writing underneath there, line the back with an image from an embroidery piece. And then on these strings, I just dangled a couple of vintage stamps. On this page, I was inspired by Rachel at Roxy Creations. She did one of these recently where she creates those paper bands for like a document keeper or holder, but she glued it down to her page, and I thought that was a great idea. So I've got that glued down, and it can be opened from the front as well, but I just like to keep it closed. And then in there I've got some antique and vintage book pages and music and other things. I love how the top of this page turned out. I put a piece of lace down, and then I just wove some fabric in and out of the lace. I thought that looked pretty. And then the other side of that book jacket, created a flip out. I've got a pocket here from a flashcard. And then in there, I've got this faux French seed packet image. And this is a kit that I have in my shop. And then on this page, some of my favorite fabrics. I just love these old striped linen fabrics. So I've got that piece with the pretty blue, and then a really nice lace piece, another piece of plain linen on the top, and then I just did a decorative stitch on there. That creates a nice fabric flip on that page. Here again, I've got a corner tuck with a piece of vintage linen, and in there I've got this page from a botanical book and a French book page. Little collaging on the bottom of that page and on the top of that one. And then here's the other side of that pretty lace page, and on there I tuck this tag that I made. This is a tag I made for Tag Team Friday for the Graphics Fairy. If you're a premium member, you can actually check out a little tutorial on how to make that. On the top of this page, I have this, it's a little tag with a metal clip, but it was attached to like a fabric or trim sample that I purchased. I didn't want to lose that tag, so I put it on this page. Here I took a vintage envelope and adhered it to the page to create a pocket. And in there, I've got this antique postcard page. It was from a little booklet from the 1800s. And then this sheet from a stamp book. Did a little embellishing on the top of that page. And in the center of this signature, I've got another one of these botanical book pages that I put in the center, but behind it, I created these 4 squares on the corners and then just glued in a piece of sari trim on each side, but left it open. So this actually creates like a little belly band on each side of the page. So you could use it to tuck something in. And then in the center, I've got a pocket here with this journaling card. The background is actually a paint swatch or paint chip. Then on the back, there's room to journal. There's some music paper there. On the top of this page, I just did a little paper embellishment that I stitched on. And then over on this page, some collaging. And then I've got one of these little scrappy-doos like Leslie likes to make. And I just really took some pretty nature-y images and adhered them to some vintage, actually handwritten letters. And then I interspersed some of these clear napkin sheets. So there's spaces to write. I think it would be so fun, and I purposely put the writing this way to start writing across this way. You see that once in a while on old letters. Here I've got a pocket, and I tucked in this journaling card. Here I've got a very wide belly band, and in there I put this antique book page. It's an accounting book, a how-to accounting book, like business accounting, and the pages in it are just gorgeous. It's got some really cool fonts. I think this is how they taught them how to make those beautiful old ledgers. With all the really neat handwriting. And then on this last page, I have this journaling card that flips up and over the top of the page. I've just got that hanging on there. So I've got these pretty bird images on each side. And then I used it's like a tag punch, but I put it on the bottom instead of the top and just hung some ribbons from each side. And then on the inside, there's plenty of room to write. And that is it. We made it to the last page. So I hope you enjoyed that flip through of this journal. If you have any questions on anything, how I made certain things, let me know, or where I sourced some of the items. I'd be happy to let you know. So until next time, bye-bye.